Good day everyone, I am Sanishane Odtohan, and for today's session, I will be discussing the gender and migration. Let's have an introduction first by defining what is migration. Migration, or the migrant itself, is any person who is having moved or has moved across an international border or within the state away from his or her habitual place of residence. This happen regardless of the person's legal status, whether the movement is voluntary or involuntary, and of course it answered the questions why or what the causes for the movement, or what the length of the stay is. We do have different types of migration, namely international cross-border, or the regional rural urban, and of course the circulation intra-urban. First, let us define what is international cross-border. International cross-border was known as an international migration. Occurs when people across the state boundaries and stay in the host state for some minimum length of time. When we talk of regional, rural, urban, it refers to the movement of people from the countryside, respectively, to the rural areas in the cities, often the metropolitan cities of the country. When we talk of circulation intra-urban naman, it is a migration happen within a single urban area. It can be rural to rural, or urban to urban, or vice versa. And then after the length of travel or migration, you are going to come back where you originally came from. That's the circulation intra-urban. Now, let us define, let us tackle what is the relationship of gender and the migration itself. Gender is the fundamental to every consideration of the causes and effects of migration. Whether involuntary, voluntary, or somewhere in between, it is acknowledged that a person's sex, ethnicity, gender identity, and sexual orientation from every stage of the migration experience. It is therefore crucial to understand how gender interacts with the migration and to respond accordingly. Taking into the accounts gender-specific migration trends can be the main difference between the implementing a project that successfully addresses the specific needs and the capacities of all the beneficiaries of it, and the one that fails to do so, and it will result to inequalities. The phrase migrants and their family was code for male migrants and their wives and children. The women's movement, however, with its emphasis on the situation of the women, caused some to question the near invisibility of women as migrants. Their presumed passivity in the migration process, and their assumed place at home. Advocating for equal rights under the law in the employment and mobility, combating the discriminatory migration practices, understanding how gender affects the types of migration undertaken, responding to how gender influences access to social services, economic growth, capacity, and risk and vulnerabilities, ensuring diversity, and how inclusiveness in consultations and participation in activities in and addressing how migration influences gender roles and relation. Due to the feminization of labor, migration increasing demand for female migrant workers and often experience discrimination and yung unequal treatment na sinasabi natin sa mga female migrants. Kaya there is a need for more gender sensitive migration policies. Now, why do we need to study gender in migration? We need to study all of those because gender affects the reason for migrating. What is the reason? Next, the decision of who will migrate, whether it is the men or the women. And then, the social network of migrant used to move, the experiences of integration and labor insertion in the destination country, and relation with one's country of origin. Women migrants frequently end up in low status, low wage production, and service job, and are often work in segregated and unregulated sectors of the economy, such as domestic works. Women migrants are exposed to a much higher risk of exploitation, violence, and abuse. Women migrants are particularly vulnerable to human trafficking for the purposes of sexual exploitation. Trafficked women are exposed to sexual violence also, and sexually transmitted infections including HIV, yet they have the little to medical or legal services. As the result, nagkakaroon tayo ng double discrimination na tinatawag. Ano ba ito? Yung double discrimination na tinatawag, yung na-experience ng mga female migrants. Why? Female migrants suffer from discrimination as women, the same as discrimination as migrants. Now let's have the gender in migration studies and somehow the improvement on women's treatment. Research in the 1970s and 1980s began to include women, but did not cause a dramatic shift in thinking about who will migrated, how immigration was explained, or the likely consequences. One of the central questions about women during this period was whether migration modernized women, emancipating them from their assumed traditional values and behaviors. Gradually, we have this so-called ad women or mix and steer, or in other terms, gender as variable. It was approach appeared in more and more research. Yet this research ultimately did not question the underlying models used to explain why people moved, where they went, or how they integrated. Instead, the differences between men and women were noted and then explained as reflections of different sex roles. in the neoclassical economic models and the push-pull demographic models of 1970s and 1980s, for example, migration was seen as the outcomes of individual decision. The responsibilities of women as wives and mothers and the role of men as breadwinners were thought to influence the decision of women. These gendered responsibilities were believed to explain why women were less likely than men to participate in migration decisions or in labor force of the host country when they did join their husbands. Let us all know what causes gendered migration. We do have three general causes of migration. The first one is the individual factors, wherein it includes the age, the birth, the race, or the marital status of an individual or the migrants. These factors become the causes of migration since sometimes individuals go and migrate because of their personal desire. Next, the family factors. It includes the size of the family, since one of the most reason why an individual migrate was to, of course, to support their families in financial. The bigger the family, the higher the chance to influence the members of the family to go abroad or to go and migrate and look for financial job supporting for their family. And the last one is the societal factors. This one, it can include the community norms and the cultural values in which will determine whether a woman can go or migrate or not in the other country. If they can go or if they can migrate, how and why. It becomes our notion that whenever a woman goes farther within their homes, within their country, we often ask who is with them and how did they did they go through with the journey alone. This might seem a small question, yet we unconsciously degrading the capacity of women to travel alone by insisting to ask those kind of questions. These were the other causes or the other hidden causes of migration. At some research, they say that women wanting to earn more and have more economic independence rather than to stay at home, and young men leaving the country to escape being forced to become soldiers and or social workers. I think this one is imminent in the Korea, particularly in the South Korea. And then the next one, women migrating to escape social or sexual violence, abuse, and then sometimes the conflict in the situations that they were in. Single women, widows, or divorcees migrating to escape social stigma. And then the last one, women or young women migrating to escape restrictions to their freedoms, pressure or the pressure to marry or to remain chaste until marriage. These are the gender discrimination and, of course, the norms in our society, in our country. Men, they were expected to support their family economically, financially. So, they migrate to earn money while their wives stay behind. Next, migration might be seen as the rite of passage for young men. It may be less acceptable for women to move about and travel on their own. So, women may find it more difficult to migrate or alone, or they migrate shorter distances rather than men. It may be the norm for women to move to husbands' families upon marriage. This happens mostly in our society, of course, within our family. Lastly, parents may see it as the duty for their daughters to migrate and send money to them to support the family. So it encouraged them. They encourage their daughter, their sons to migrate to earn money for financial support. As an ending statement, I want to end or leave this passage so that you guys can ponder or to think how we should treat women upon immigration, or when it comes to immigration. This was from Pirate Sotelo. It says there that gender is not a variable to be measured, but a set of social relations that organize immigration patterns. Then to begin with an examination of how gender relations facilitate or constrains both women's and men's immigration and settlement.